All right, today we're diving into something pretty amazing, how artificial intelligence is helping us map the every move of the tiny, microscopic machines that basically run our world.
I mean, think about that for a second. An off switch for any disease? It sounds like science fiction, right? But the answer might actually lie at an incredibly small scale, with the fundamental components of life itself. Let's take a closer look.
You see, everything our body does, from fighting off a cold to just thinking a thought, it all happens because these tiny machines called proteins are folding, twisting, and dancing in just the right way. They're not just static little blobs, they are constantly moving, constantly changing shape to get their jobs done.
Okay, so here's the catch. Watching this molecular dance, it's incredibly difficult. And for decades, scientists have been banging their heads against a massive data problem.
You see, there are really two main ways we've been able to see a protein up until now. We can run experiments in a lab, which gives us a few super clear snapshots. Or we can use these incredibly powerful computers to simulate their movements, which, well, that generates an absolute flood of information.
So, you can think of it like this. The experiments, they give us these gorgeous, perfect, but totally static photos. You miss all the action, but the computer simulations, they give us the entire movie. But it's like trying to find one critical second in a film that's millions and millions of frames long. The sheer amount of data is it's like trying to hear a whisper in the middle of a hurricane.
And when I say overwhelming, I mean it. A single simulation can spit out over 10,000 different structures for just one protein. Imagine trying to find the one, single, most important functional movement in all of that noise. It's been a monumental, almost impossible challenge.
But what if you could build a kind of smart filter? A tool that could just automatically sift through all that chaos and point you directly to the movements that actually matter.
Well, that is exactly what researchers at Carnegie Mellon University have done. They've built a machine learning model called Kernel PCA. Now that sounds complicated, but the easiest way to think about it is as an AI-powered filter. But instead of looking for spam in your email, it's hunting for the secret to a protein's function hidden in this absolute ocean of data.
And, don't just take my word for it. The researchers themselves put it perfectly. Their model is all about uncovering those meaningful patterns, finding that one critical signal buried in all the noise of the simulations.
Okay, so how does this magic filter actually work? Let's break it down. It's basically a four-step process. First, you just feed the model all that messy simulation data, thousands of protein structures. Then, step 2, it uses this really cool mathematical trick called a kernel. Think of it like putting on a pair of 3D glasses. Suddenly, hidden patterns just pop out. For step 3, it uses something called PCA to find the single most important main event, the one dominant movement in all that data. And finally, it gives that movement a score, telling scientists exactly how crucial it is for the protein's job. Pretty neat, right?
But, there's a problem. Analyzing every single atom in a protein takes a ton of computing power. It's super slow and expensive. So the researchers had this really clever idea. They asked, what if we just ignored most of the atoms? And the result? It was absolutely remarkable. They found that by focusing on just one specific kind of carbon atom, the C-beta atom, they could slash the complexity and the cost of the calculation, all without losing the really critical information.
And just how big of a shortcut are we talking about here? For their main case study, they cut down the number of atoms they had to look at by a whopping 88%. That's a huge deal. It makes the whole process way faster, way more efficient, and it means we can apply this to even bigger, more complicated proteins.
All right, so a new tool is great and all, but does it actually work? The researchers knew they had to put their model to the ultimate test.
So they did something really smart. They picked a protein where they already knew the answer. The critical movement was already well understood by science. So the question was, could their smart filter find that exact same movement all on its own? If it could, they'd know they were onto something huge.
The protein they picked is a big one. It's called the beta-2 adrenergic receptor, or beta-2AR for short. This thing sits on the surface of our cells, and it's a target for tons of important drugs. Think asthma and heart conditions. And here's the key. Scientists already knew that for this protein to switch on, a specific corkscrew-shaped part, called helix 6, had to move in a very, very particular way.
So, the big moment. Did the model find it? Oh, it did way more than that. The model pinpointed the top 10 most important movements in the entire protein.
and every single one of them was located in that exact right spot, transmembrane helix 6. It was a perfect match. Unbelievable.
Let me put it another way. This wasn't just finding a needle in a haystack. This was like finding the exact right needle, pulling it out, and then doing it again 9 more times in a row without a single mistake. It was just stunning proof of the AI's power and its accuracy.
But hang on, because the model's insights don't even stop there. It can see way more than just one single movement.
What's really cool is that it can actually see how different parts of the protein work together, like a team, how they coordinate their movements and act in harmony to get a job done. So for instance, back in our test protein, the beta-2AR, the model showed how 2 specific building blocks, these are called residues, move in perfect sync when the protein turns on. And what's wild is that they aren't even right next to each other, but they move together, like dance partners.
And this reveals a totally new way of looking at proteins, a dynamical network. It's not a map of what's physically close. No, it's a map of teamwork. It shows which parts dance together to make things happen.
And all of this brings us right back to that huge question we started with. Because understanding these movements, these networks, well, it has some pretty profound implications for the future of medicine.
Think about it. If we can pinpoint the exact movements that turn a protein on or off, we can design drugs that are way smarter and more effective. We could even start designing brand new proteins from scratch to do specific jobs. It gives us this incredibly deep understanding of disease right down at the molecular level. So what this research really gives us is a powerful new lens to see the dance of life. It's like we've been given a map to the very movements that control our biology. The only question left is, now that we have this map, what amazing problems are we going to solve next?